All right. Today we have Cam Crum here, and he's got a new product that he wants to talk about. And as you guys know, the regulatory stuff is, of course, becoming far more oppressive, both in Canada and the United States. And things are not awesome. So for many of us, it makes it more difficult for us to be able to comply appropriately, which, of course, as you know, in some aspects of our field, are critical, and we can't necessarily overlook them. Otherwise, the federal ban hammer comes down. So it's very, very important to stay on top of these things and make sure that you're in compliance. And just like me, I specialize in WISPs and WISP technology and whatnot, and branch out and other things. But I have weak skills as well. Like, for example, I have a bookkeeper. Otherwise, I would probably be in jail. So for many of us, we focus on our skills and we rely on others who have done the same thing in their respective fields. So these guys have actually brought an awesome product to the market, which will help save our tails and do a lot of the new regulatory work for us. So the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. And, I've been trying to talk this thing up for a little bit here. It's not necessarily something that, we wanted to do. It was kind of like we say on the website, is born out of a necessity, right? So for years, myself and one of my partners in this venture, Brian Webster, we've been doing a lot of 477 work for people. I started back in the Wismon days. I had the Wismon software, and that was primarily a GIS based software, from the start. And that was one of the things that was kind of in our wheelhouse. And so we ended up doing a lot of that 477 prep, and then people asked us to file, and so we did for an extra fee. And then after we sold that company a few years ago, many of our customers came back to me and asked me if I could keep doing that work. And so I have, and then people started referring me on Facebook, and so just kind of snowballed into this whole thing. I had a pretty good set of clientele who would come to me every 6 months and ask if I could help file for them, and I would. But with this new requirements, all this new, the BDC stuff, which is now, reporting down to the address level, I couldn't take on the volume of work by myself. And so what I figured out is that I just had to write some automated processes to handle this data. And then, I needed some other people to help me get both get the data in and get it processed, and plus with the PE requirement, which I know has been relaxed a little bit for the first three filings, at least for now. We didn't know that from the start, so we have a PE working with us as well, who is certifying all this stuff that we're doing. So basically what it is, it's website, and you go and you create an account, and then you get into the application. Basically, it's just a web app, and then there's some things that just walk you through the software. And what it is basically is a lot of data collection and uploading, right? So there's two methods the BDC has for filing, and one of them is what they call a polygon method, where you just submit like a coverage polygon, and then they determine which addresses you cover based on that. But with that comes a volume, just volumes and volumes of data, technical data that you have to submit. And our feeling on that is that, the small nature of the wireless ISP industry and the somewhat non-technical nature as compared to other, kind of telecom services where, when you're dealing with stuff like mobile wireless, mobile carriers and stuff, that they get very technical in their equipment and all the specifications, and then of course when you're doing the design, you have all the parameters that you have for your, and so that data is all recorded and kept, and it's very organized because they're big companies, right? And they have to do that. The wireless ISP guys, as you know, are a little bit more disorganized for the most part, and they don't necessarily keep the best records all the time. And plus, the vendors, I think the vendors we could put them in the same category. Yeah, that helps. So, so some vendors in the same category, that just don't even publish a lot of that information, right? And so it's like pulling teeth to get that kind of technical data from the vendors, and some of them may not even give it to you. I don't even know. We haven't really gone down that road because that's not the methodology we use.
Mhm.
So, rather than try to fight that fight, what we're doing is the second type of submission, which is the address locations. And so basically you have to determine, which addresses you can service, and then you give them a list of those based on their fabric file. So they give you, when you're an ISP, you go in into the CostQuest/FCC site, and you register your email, and hopefully it's the same one you used for your 477, because that's how they link things together. And if you didn't, then you have to request a link, and then it takes 2 or 3 days for them to respond and figure out if you're the person you say you are and that you have the stuff. But anyway, they base this file on your FCC deployment data, and they give you basically all the counties that you cover, right? The addresses for all the counties in one nice big giant text file. They don't break it up by county or anything. They just give you a giant blob of data, and which it presents its own problems, right? Because trying to upload a 800 megabyte file to a web page isn't exactly trivial. And so anyway, yeah, so you get all this data, and then you have to use their location information to submit your filing. So we use a little bit different methodology. We actually gather all your data, your sites, your access points, all the technical, is much technical data as we can get that isn't, kind of hidden behind the vendors and manufacturers and stuff, right? So it's really things like your transmit powers and receive sensitivities, and those are kind of the most technical things of antenna azimuths, beam widths, and that kind of thing. So we can actually do somewhat of an RF study. And so we basically look at every single point within the kind of your coverage boundary. And when I say boundary, we're just talking about kind of the max extents of where you say, things cover, right? So if you have an AP at 100 feet and you say, oh yeah, I cover, 3 miles with that. Okay, great. That's kind of your boundary. And so we put all that together. And so kind of one big boundary for your whole area. And then we clip out those addresses that don't fit within there. And then we look at every single address within that boundary and determine which APs can service it, if any, and then what the best AP is, right? So we actually, that's kind of a bonus that we provide after we're done here. We'll actually give you a file with all the addresses within your area and let you know if they're serviceable, and not only that, which APs can service them and which one we consider the best. So it's just kind of a little bonus thing you get, in addition to us creating this file and doing the filing and stuff. So that's kind of what we do, and then of course we handle the fiber and all that stuff too. If you've got a wireline service like fiber or cable or DSL or some other, who knows what, if there's anybody providing, Ethernet over, so those have to all be reported. But basically people can upload those polygons as well. So if they have like a polygon that they've drawn around the homes they service, or even if they just have their fiber routes, right, they can submit those to us. If they have a shapefile or a KML or something of their fiber routes, they can actually upload those, and we go in and create, buffers around those routes to encompass the homes, and then determine, which locations are serviceable that way as well. So it's not just wireless. We can handle fiber and the other hardline services, DSL and cable and whatnot. Satellite, we haven't run into anybody yet who's asked us to do satellite. I'm not sure what the major challenges are there. It's a little bit different, but there's so few of those guys out there. I'm sure they have their own staff that do these things. So once we get all that done, we send it off to our engineer. We have passed this methodology by the FCC, and they are on board with it. So we basically asked the question, will this work? Will you accept this if we submit? And they said, yep, we will. And so it turns out it's a decent way to do it. We're not providing propagation everywhere. It's very specific, pinpointed things that we're doing. And so we don't need to publish a model, and I mean, all these parameters that you have to do if you upload a polygon. Your ridiculous things like the author of the model and the vintage of the model, when it was published, what what terrain and clutter data you used and when it was published, right? What the vintage of that data and the resolution, and of course, all that good stuff. And it's just so much to do that I think it's going to be very difficult for kind of the small average guy to take that on. So that's where we are.
Cool. So you guys also do GIS as well, then?
Well, yeah. So, sort of, yeah. So, I've done a lot of GIS work in my career for different, telecom companies. I started out doing cellular, network design, RF engineering. Of course, that involved a lot of GIS work that we had to do. Back then, there was a big platform called MapInfo that was kind of a big player in the GIS world. It was kind of a big competitor with ArcView back then, and a lot of companies used it. Some of the big cellular companies, and so over the course of time, I kind of became this map info expert. In fact, I led a bunch of user groups and did some training and stuff like that. So yeah, I had kind of a little bit of a background in that. So over the years, I've used that, of course, in my all the wireless mapping stuff that I've done, or the web mapping based stuff, the web based mapping. Brian also is really he's a GIS expert as well. In fact, he has a company called wirelessmapping.com that he runs most of the time, that where he does consulting on GIS projects, or even he does a lot of network design, he does some fiber design, wireless, whatever, right? So pretty much any mapping needs, he can service those through his company. So
it sounds like I'm going to have to sit down with him as well.
Yeah, you should. I think Brian's a good guy, and like I said, he's been in the industry a long time as well. He's comes from the Navy. Yeah, I think he was in some kind of communications. He'll have to tell you the details. Sorry, Brian, if I'm screwing this up for you, but but yeah, that was his background, and then he he got into doing the GIS work and stuff like that. So yeah, he and I have collaborated on a couple other projects. In fact, we're working on another project together as well right now through another company. And actually, he brought me into that one a couple of years ago, and it's just kind of an ongoing thing that we're doing on as another project. But yeah, great guy, very knowledgeable in that arena.
That's cool. See, this is where I come back to tool sets. It's just like some of us are hardwired for specific things because that's what we focus on and train on and hone. And well, all of us aren't really, but I mean, then when it comes down to it, after one individual, say like me, focuses on a specific area and polishes all those facets, there's this whole other world that ties into that's far more complex, that we need to rely on others for. And that's where you guys come in that regard. So it's like, it's nice. This is where I guess the Aon or community comes in, I guess you could say, where all of us rely on each other to, be the different cogs of the machine to make things cruise along in the small telecom world.
Yeah, for sure. It's nice to have a broad base of knowledge. And I think there's a lot of guys, in this industry who are, they're technical guys by nature, right? And they've gone out and built these networks and providing services that other people won't touch and things like that. And I know, I don't want to offend anybody. I know a lot of guys are very much like do-it-yourselfers, right? They love doing things themselves. And in fact, Brian and I were just having this discussion this morning early. We're talking about, there's so many guys who, find it hard to let some of this stuff go, right? And let people who are kind of, the subject matter experts take it on, because they're so used to having to do everything themselves. And I've been there, for sure. I've been self-employed most of my life as a contractor. I've only ever had, I think, 3 like real jobs. I get real, I guess, in quotes, where somebody else was writing paychecks to me other than, paying invoices. Right. And so, I know how that goes, and I like doing things myself. I mean, I build cars on the side, and I built, I've remodeled my house and built pergolas. And so, I like doing, I get it. I'm a very hands-on person, and I like to solve those problems myself. But sometimes you get into things like this where it's just, you're going to get in over your head probably. and it's best to find somebody who can help you. And it's okay. I'm just going to say it's okay. It's okay to let go a little bit. I struggle with that, like everybody else does, because I like to know how to solve problems. But I've definitely learned my lesson more than a few times with, oh my gosh, if I'd have just hired somebody to do this, it'd have been done and I would have spent, a quarter of the money. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, let it go. I mean, we're not the only ones doing this. Of course, there's, I know the tower coverage guys are doing it too. And I think there's another company called Intisera who was, they did a lot of regulatory stuff. I don't know what their stance is on this or if they're doing it or not. And I know there's a couple of independent guys out there on you can find them on Wisp Talk and stuff like that or whatever that are helping people with it. So, but just make sure, I would say, be sure that, the people are quality people, they know what they're doing. And then for the certification part, make sure you either get that PE or, you meet the requirements, because they're not trivial. If you're going to go without the PE, the requirements are you either have to be a double E with specific knowledge or direct knowledge, I think that is what it says, of the network design, and 7 years of experience doing wireless network design or network design, depending on what it is, if it's fiber or whatever. And so that's not trivial either. I mean, a lot of these guys haven't even been in business for 7 years, and probably don't. There's probably a few guys like, I mean, I'm a double E and I've been doing this stuff for a long time, but I still don't meet those requirements. I couldn't go out and say, yeah, I mean, I have 7 years of experience, but I don't have direct knowledge of your network, right? So, and then the other one is you don't have to be a double E. You can be, another person, but you have to have, their wording is specific training on network design and have at least 10 years of experience doing that. And so those are pretty stiff. Those are pretty stiff requirements. I don't know that there's a whole lot of people in the WISP world that have that kind of experience. I mean, I'm sure there's a handful, but
I've actually been doing this for, oh God, I started in the 90s, believe it or not, eh?
Yeah, me too.
With Bell, actually. Like I was working with Bell Canada when I first started this. But now this is why we need to rely on people like you guys. Because I mean, like, I'm a NE, so I've got my plastic, gumball machine ring instead of an iron ring.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, rather than me even bother with it, because I know that I won't qualify regardless of the fact that I have been in the industry doing this for such a long time. Yeah. It's just better to rely on professionals like you guys. You guys specialize in this. You guys have developed a platform for it now. This platform is obviously going to be honed over the years, and you're specifically focusing on this this cog, this application, this need within the industry. So you guys are the specialists. You are the ones that we should be going to. Because I mean, like, some of us, there are going to be some guys. I've got some guys who I work with that are actually like would probably meet those qualifications. They actually have bachelor's degrees in communications, but it's like, there's so many stupid government loopholes and bureaucratic BS and like legal stuff that it's just better to rely on you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd say that's a pretty good assessment, of the situation. And, it obviously there's guys that are going to go it alone, and that's great. Let them, I say, if you can do it and you got the capability, then for sure do it. I would say, be careful about how you do your submissions. I know some people are saying, oh, I'm just going to overlay propagation plots. My feeling on that is, and then, do an intersection of the points with that. And I kind of feel like if you post that as your methodology, like, you submit your address list and then just say, oh yeah, I just took my coverage polygon and did a spatial intersect with all the points. Well, then I think they're probably going to come back and go, well, that's basically the polygon submission, and so now we want all this technical data again. And so, I would warn people against, kind of that methodology, just for that reason, because what you don't want to have is them coming back and saying, no, this is not accepted, and you got it wrong, because the fines are steep. It's 15 grand per occurrence of an error. right? And, I don't know what their enforcement is going to be like. I know, over the years with the 477, they really haven't been that strict. They give you several emails and warnings and, chances to correct and whatnot. And that's great. And, maybe they'll do the same with this, but I think, right, right. I think they are, I think they, just the way that they have presented the information so far and things like that, I think they're going to get pretty tough with this. That's my gut feeling. And so I would say, try to get it right. They're probably going to be fairly lenient on the first one, just because it's so much to do and stuff. But I think that they're going to start coming down pretty hard if people don't, make a real effort to get it right. And so, that's why we're here. And that's kind of what we set out to do was really to help people get it right. And, we're working hard every day. In fact, you said our software is going to be refined over the years. It's getting refined every day. I mean, obviously we had to it was very, very fast just to get it up and running. I mean, most of the time something like this would probably take 6-7 months to get going. And I think, we had it up and running in like 3 weeks. And so definitely some challenges with that. There's, been bugs here and there. And then obviously we're going to keep upgrading. I just added actually more GIS capability last night. We were just kind of showing people their towers and APs so they could get an idea and make sure they got their data in right, that looks right on the map. Last night, I added the capability of showing their big coverage boundary polygon that we use to clip the addresses, and then also showing the actual location data that fits within that right now. And so they get a pretty good idea of what the potential, is for locations. Now, obviously, that's going to get pared down quite a bit, once we actually do the analysis on it. But at least they can see it. They can get an idea of what it looks like, what their area is and that kind of stuff, and make sure that they've got a good feel for how we're, getting that data in. So, it's a lot of work, and definitely going to be having a lot of features added to it in the coming months and years to make it something that is probably more than just what we have it at right now, but add some different features and capabilities to it. So
yeah, and something which I wanted to point out, actually, you mentioned something earlier which really sparked a neuron for me, is that you mentioned about the DIYers, and that's the thing about the WISP industry and small telecom is it's mostly DIY. And I think what divides us and what actually not only defines but assures success is those who are able to, realize hubris and humility, and actually be able to put aside ego and put aside their precious, delicate little brains and say, well, I'm not an expert. And actually, in consulting, I can directly relate to that, was that early on, I always told myself, look, you don't know everything. There's always going to be people who know more than you, so try to learn as much as you can. And thank God I learned that early on, because I'll tell people straight up when I don't know something. Now, to apply that into the WISP industry, I see too many others that just refuse to, grow or learn about different practices or use different technology, or they're just stuck in their ways. It's like, well, I'm going to use Netgear on this tower site. I'm going to do this. And well, you know what? I can do the form submissions myself, or I'm going to do this. And it's just like, but I looked at your prep work for your 477s, and it's just like, dude, seriously, hire somebody. No, I know what I'm doing. And then it gets rejected. And it's just like, it's always best to rely on the experts in that. that's
I'll say I've been doing the 477 now, since it started, I guess 2007 or 8, something like that. And I'll tell you, every year I get ones that get kicked back for stuff, and I always go in and fix those for people. But yeah, I mean, it's really hard. You're dealing with, data that's submitted by them, of course, and then trying to make sure that all that stuff is right. And a lot of the subscription files come from, billing systems and whatnot. And, and, they do, I think, as good a job as they can. Obviously it's kind of garbage in, garbage out situation, right? So not to say that people are putting in garbage, but here's a common situation. So most of the billing systems use, the speeds that you use to provision your customers for the speeds that they report in the, because there's nothing, you set up a plan and you name it, oh yeah, a high speed plan 50 by 10 or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing inherent in that plan that says that it's 50 by 10 other than the name, right? And then when you go to actually add that plan to a customer and you say what speeds you want to give them, if your billing system is doing the provisioning through Radius or whatever, right, Microtics or however they're doing provisioning, they'll put in maybe 50.5, right, because they want to over provision a little bit so that if somebody runs a speed test, they're not seeing like 48 or you know what I mean. So the over provision to try to bump up that speed a little bit for things like that. And so that's what gets put into the file, right? So they'll have, and sometimes they don't even do a standard with that. So they'll put in like one guy's getting 50.5, but another guy's getting 51.78, right? Because for whatever reason, they needed a little bit more on that dude or something. Well, so now you've got two speed tiers that should be 50 by 10, right? But you've got 50.5 by 10.2 and 51.78 by 10.7. And so you've got these two different speed tiers and you've got customers reported in them. Well, the FCC no longer wants decimal points in anything over 2 megabits, right? So if you have decimal points in there, they'll kick it back. So what typically I do is I just truncate the decimals, right? And so if you've got one plan that's 50.5 and another one that's 50.78 or something, well, now they're both 50 by 10. So now you've got two rows that have identical data, and they don't like that either. They don't like duplicate rows. So now you've got to go through and merge those rows together, right? And then sum the values in the last two columns. And so it's not a trivial thing to prepare these. They used to just take it, right? They used to allow 3 decimal points. Well, so like 2 years ago, they changed that, and now they don't allow the decimal points anymore. So it's little things like that, or maybe one of them comes out as 51 and it should be 50, and it's just little tiny minutia like that goes into making sure these files are correct. And so that's the kind of thing that we're doing and looking at, for the 477 side. Same thing with the deployment. We want to make sure that we're getting your deployment right, with the blocks and not just providing, the billing. Most of the billing systems will provide a deployment file, but it only shows places where you already have service. So if you have at least one customer in a block, then they report that block. That's not really accurate, right? Because there's some of these blocks can be really small in, say, suburban or urban areas, and then you get out into the country, and some of these blocks can be really large, right? So you can cover people in the next block over. You just don't happen to have anybody there because there's only like 2 people in it, right? And they haven't taken your service yet. So now you're not even reporting that block, and so you're basically underreporting drastically if you use that method. Plus, what we're seeing, I put a post up yesterday on WISP Talk about this. What we're starting to see is when we look at people's, kind of bounded coverage area and then look at the files they were sent by the FCC for their location data, we're starting to see that they're missing a bunch of counties that they actually have coverage in because they probably underreported on their 477s. And so now they have to go back, and there's a whole process you go through of requesting more data, and you have to say why you're requesting more data and all this stuff, right? And they're like, well, your 477 doesn't say you covered these blocks, why do you need more counties? So basically, yeah, that's one of the issues, right? And so it's going to be the same thing with money, right? Because this is what it all comes down to, right? These things are done because the federal government is giving out money to people to go build broadband, which is terrible, right? I mean, that's kind of the antithesis of our industry, right? Is all these guys are out there spending their own money, building their own networks, providing a service that nobody else would do. And now the feds are coming in and they're using your information against you to give money out to somebody, to come and overbuild you. And so, that's one of the reasons I used to tell people on the 477 deployment, hey, if it's optimistic that that's a good thing, right? I mean, if you say you cover a few blocks, you touch a few blocks, and maybe it might be iffy. It's probably all right. I mean, it's not obviously within reason, right? There's a reasonable thing there, that you can say, you're not getting 10 miles off that 50-foot site. Don't be unreasonable. But yeah, but on this filing, I'm kind of going the opposite way because the fines are so stiff, and the reporting for it is crowdsourced, right? So the general public is going to be able to come in and look up an address and say, oh no, that guy doesn't service that address. He can't service that address. And now you're in the position of having to defend your submission, right? And I would say, if anything, go conservative on this filing. Obviously you want to keep the money out of your area, but also you don't want to lose a bunch of money. You want to take a bunch of money out of your pocket in fines because you did it wrong. And that money is basically going to go to whatever competitor is coming into your area that's going to get the grant, right? So it's kind of a double hit whammy. Not only are they taking your regular tax dollars and handing them to somebody else, now they're probably taking fines from you for bad reporting and handing it to somebody else.
And I don't even want to get down that rabbit hole. I actually just inspired me to do a vlog, a little mini doc about that, because the corruption in the Canadian government is just insane, but I don't want to get political.
No.
We're seeing that with the telecoms here, where there's a big thing in the news right now about, not to get off topic, but there's a big thing in the news right now about the whole Rogers outage, and saying we need to have more resiliency, more variance in the industry, more competition. And it's like, meanwhile, the government has intentionally given the majority of grants out to the bad players like Bell Canada or ExploreNet or Rogers, and really pulled the rug out from underneath the small carriers and made it so difficult for small carriers in Canada to even operate. And in fact, trying to get us shut down. And then they turn around and say, well, we need more competition. And this isn't a nationalist type statement, but they're bringing in foreign entities like Vodafone. They're trying to get them into Canada, when it's like, why don't you focus on the local telecoms here? You're just creating larger monopolies rather than breaking the industry up so that the smaller players can become stronger and more appropriate and become proper carriers to be able to support Canada's infrastructure with more diversity and more resilience. But they're not going that way. They're just building more monopolies. But to get back on topic, actually, I could totally, I've put a lot of thought in that, because I'm very, very grossed out, and I'm becoming more of a political activist every day, and it's bad. But one thing which I wanted to ask as well is with the functionality, the mechanisms in your software. So I was thinking about that as well, as contemplating that. And it's just like, does most of it has to be manually entered, or are you guys relying on like platforms like Perseem or SNMP and GPS and metric pulls from devices over SNMP?
Yeah, that's kind of up to the end user. So we have templates that we have them fill out, right? As far as their tower and AP data, and how they get that data in is kind of up to them. We've actually had a couple of guys contribute to us a little bit. One guy, actually Richard Strittmatter at Sierra Networks, I'll mention him. He gave us a script that will actually go into Sonar and pull data. To at least, I think it's just tower data, but that's, that's a pretty good piece. And then another guy, I cannot remember his name. I think he's with a company called Current Networks, wrote a Python script that will actually go into, I believe it's either UISP or it might be air control. But anyway, it's one of those. I'm not sure if it's the newer or older version, of the Ubiquity stuff. But he wrote a Python script that will go through and pull all that data. And so they've shared those with us, and we are going to be putting those up on our webpage to make it a little bit easier, just to gather some of that data if people are using those services. So yeah, that's a great thing. I love the community, contributions, and certainly we will take those and utilize them. Obviously, it's kind of like end user beware on that stuff. I mean,
of course,
we haven't really tested them, but but obviously if you want to go through and look at the code, I'm sure it's all there, so you can study it if you need to.
I couldn't put my way out of a white paper bag, but anytime that I've gotten a script put out for people, I've asked another community member, a colleague of mine, hey, dude, or dudette, or other, would you mind writing this script that'll do this for me? And 9 out of 10 times our community members will do that, and then I do a video on it and submit it. But like, having that kind of an ability with your software, because it still is fairly fledgling in the
Oh
grander
yeah,
scheme of things. But
for
that's
sure.
going to be great, is actually being able to rely on platforms like Preseam, which literally pull every metric that you
Yep.
need. I don't know if Preseam pulls the GPS coordinates, but I mean, all
Yeah,
that stuff can be pulled through SNMP, right?
probably not. Yeah, some of it can, and actually, so there is a latency requirement in this report as well. So when you report
Oh,
so when you report an address, you have to say whether it's a in on a low latency or high latency network, right? And their definition of that is low latency is the 95th percentile of latency, right, in on your network under 100 milliseconds,
oh,
right?
well, if your network is over 100 milliseconds, then you need to revisit how you've
Yeah.
designed it.
Right, right. Well, and so what we did is there is a script on our page now. In fact, I've got to go back and tell a bunch of people about this because that was not part of the original software, to let people know that we had to gather this latency data. So I wrote a little script that will actually go. You just drop it into a Linux box anywhere that can reach your CPE subnets, right? And then you just type in the command and then the ranges that you want to ping, right? So your subnet ranges, and it will actually go out. It does it'll do a /24 in about 1.5 seconds, right? It'll ping every address in a /24. And so if you have multiples, obviously it takes a few seconds to run this program. And what it does is it obviously gathers all those pings, it orders them, and then determines the 95th percentile. And then what we do is, because it has to be out to the internet, it has to be pings to the internet, not just internal, right? So what, after we get that 95th percentile, we actually do a ping out to the closest Google node, wherever that is, because that's probably pretty reliable point. I suppose we could tune it a little bit and let people put in the IP address, the public IP on the internet that they want to
Oh,
ping.
yeah, because Google, you have to be so careful. You guys are probably
Yeah.
already aware of this, but Google has security measures in place for DDoS. So, like, if you're not
Oh
sending
yeah.
teeny tiny ICMP packets at it, it will temporarily stop all ICMP flow. And of course, if you send too many consistent packets at it, then it will, of course, stop you as
Right.
well. So,
Yeah. Well, it's just a single one. So we're just saying, okay, let's just ping it once, and then we're going to add that as our kind of off net, side of the latency. And so we add those two numbers together, and then that's what we use to report, right? So, and if people want to do it multiple times, different times of the day, that's fine too. And we'll just take, kind of the best one. It doesn't really matter to us. We just need some measurement. And but yeah, some people have come back and said, oh, well, I can get all that off of Preseam. And I'm like, well, great. Send me what you got then, but obviously Preseam is not going to do that 95th percentile calculation, I don't think. So we're still going to have to do some kind of analysis on it to figure out the 95th percentile, which is fine. We can certainly work within that realm, but yeah, Preseam's a great, great product for gathering that kind of information. I know there's some other ones out there too. Whatever NMS you have, if it can gather that, awesome. Get that information. So, but again, you've got to prove this stuff, right? So if they come back and say, how did you determine you had a low latency network? If somebody just says, oh, well, I pinged a couple customers, I don't think that's going to be, I don't think that's going to be necessarily acceptable. So pretty sure this methodology will work, and like I said, we could, if we need to step it up and do it, 5 times or something instead, and take the average of the 95th percentile, maybe that's what we do. But I think we're going to be good enough on our methodology that we have now.
cool. Well, I'm really
Yeah.
excited about this. So this is the spot where I say, plug your website, plug your company.
Okay. All right. Well, so the company name is regulatorysolutions.us, right? And so we couldn't get the .com or net, I don't think. So anyway, regulatorysolutions.us, and that's pretty much it. So you just come to the website, and there's lots of information there. We have some downloads. We have a quick start video, which I'll probably be redoing today because the software has actually changed quite a bit since I made the video. But it's still good information. It still has the basics, and so there's a video there you can watch to see how to get started and how the software works. works and what kind of information we need. We also have some download templates on the site. So if you're not quite ready to sign up yet, that's fine too. We would encourage you though, if you're going to be doing it, do it as quick as possible because it's a lot of data. And we have a lot of people who signed up. And so we are really busy trying to get all the analysis done and get it to our PE so we can get it in time. I would warn people that if you don't get us your data before at least a week before the deadline, we're probably not going to be able to get it in time. We were doing an early bird special in July to just try to incentivize people to get in and get their data to us before the end of the month, and that worked out really well. A lot of people took us up on that, and so we're happy to do that. But I would say right now, if you can get your stuff, if you're considering doing this and you don't know how and you need the help, get it to us as quick as you can because time's running short. I know it seems like, oh yeah, we got a whole month. Well, PE doing, having to do several hundred, stampings and analysis, in a week or so is a lot. And so, this isn't a last minute thing. I know with the 477 data, every single time I did it, the last week I would get inundated, with people getting their stuff to me going, oh, here's my stuff. I know it's due in 3 days, I can't do that this time. We
No.
can't handle it. Yeah.
What are the penalties?
Yeah, the penalties are $15,000 if you miss the deadline. And like I said, I don't know how strict they're going to be, but I would say don't find out.
Well, no, yeah, of course. But this goes back to the whole, we all need to practice, recognize humility. We need to actually step our egos down and be a little bit more open about things and rely on others as well. But at the same time, when it comes down to all of this stuff, I mean, like you can't leave to the last minute. And I mean, this is a complaint which I also hear from accountants and bookkeepers and literally everybody where deadlines are due. We as an entire generation are horrible for waiting to the last minute. Even bookings, like I might have an entire open week next week, but as soon as Sunday night, Monday morning roll around, the week starts booking up. And it's like, we all need to practice better planning and leave lots of extra room. Don't go to the airport an hour before an international flight. No, you got to be there 4. It's like everybody needs to plan better. And it's also not fair on you guys because like it puts a lot of stress on you and the provider when they submit their stuff late and then they get a penalty and then they're angry at you because it's like, well, why did I get this fine? And it's just like, well, you didn't submit it in time. I can't get all this stuff done in time. And it's just like, you need to plan appropriately. Otherwise, it's going to come back on you. So that's something which we all need to do, whether it's with your form submissions or just general life lesson. Leave a lot of extra time because it's better to be done early than late.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I'd mentioned this on Tasso's podcast too. I think one of the things this is going to do, whether it's through us or just people doing it on their own or through some other party, it's going to make people have better practices in how they organize their information about their network, right? I mean, we've already run into a lot of people who have just said, well, I don't know where my APs, what direction they face or, the azimuth on them. And I don't know what the beam width is or the model. And I'm like, well, why not? That seems like wireless 101 to me. But I get it. People are trying to do stuff. They're not, especially if they're not from this world, they don't know that they need all that information. And so hopefully this will kind of urge them into, some better practices as far as organization goes in their network and that kind of stuff. And it can't hurt. Right. And especially if if your goal is to try to sell your company. And this is a story I tell about, when I owned a WISP with Robert Olive for 8 years, and then we wrote WISMON in the process of running that, really just for ourselves. And then people started asking to buy it. But when we went to sell our company to Jab, which is Rise now, of course, they used to be go under the name Jab, but when we sold our company to them, they wanted to come in and spend a week going to all of our tower sites, right, and looking over our network. Well, because of the way we stored information in WISMON, which was we took pictures of everything, right? I mean, towers, APs, the antennas, everything on the the cabling on the towers, every single subscriber, right? So we had all these photos and all this information in the system. They took a look and they go, wow, we don't need to go. We didn't visit one site. We didn't go visit one site. And so just, if you can keep records like that, it's really it doesn't just help you, it right now, it helps you in the long run, especially when it comes down to, like if you want to sell your business, having all that information together makes a huge impression on a buyer and, or a bank, right? Even if you're just trying to borrow money. I was talking with John Scribner a couple of weeks ago about this, and he was really excited we were doing this because he said, when we give out money, one of our requirements is people have to be in compliance with all the regulatory stuff. And he said, man, it would be awesome if you guys could, help people out by reporting that to us. So we did. We put a checkbox in the software, allow my information to be shared with a third party, right? And it's really we're not sharing your detailed information. We're just sharing basically your filing status, right? So once we file, that information will be sent off to that third party saying this company is filed and here's the summary, and basically they're in compliance. And he was really excited, but he said, oh man, that is fantastic. He goes, because that takes a huge burden off of me of having to track down that information, right? And so anyway, that's just one of the other benefits. Using our stuff is that we can report that to your financial institution if they have that requirement. So,
and actually, I want to make one more little note here for all those people out there. I feel like part of the reason why there's so much scrutiny appearing in the industry is going back to ego. Ego is one of the most destructive things ever. And for a lot of those guys out there who refuse to do things properly, and I don't mean like, slightly improper, like, oh, we're going to take a Rubbermaid container, we're going to put it outside, we're going to put a Netgear switch in it with a bunch of PoE injectors and a power bar. It's due to a lot of the companies out there that refuse to accept when they're wrong. And I mean, like really wrong, not just an opinion difference, right? Mm-hmm. And these guys get discovered or complained about, and then the government has to come down bearing harder on us saying, wow, there's a lot of really janky stuff in this industry. We've let this go on for too long. And, not only does it affect the consumer, but it affects our networks, and it can also affect, safety. And then when we go to the BGP matters, like, well, TELUS did this up here. Actually, no, it was this entire side of the continent when TELUS actually allowed a rookie to do some BGP programming and literally knocked out half of North America for a few hours. There's stuff like this that's happening because there's not enough scrutiny. And that's, I think, what's been happening is that before it would have been fine if there was people who were open-minded and lacked ego and just allowed themselves to flow and learn more and grow rather than, dig in their heels. We wouldn't have a lot of these problems. So people really need to open up and, broaden their horizons.
My feeling is that, I've said this before a couple of times in other places that, the intent here is really to kind of push the little guys out of the industry altogether, right? Now that may not be the stated intent, and that may not have been their, even their actual intent, but that may be the result of, what they're doing here, right? And whether they meant to do it or if it was just kind of some subtle, well, this will probably drive a lot of guys out. That may be the case. My gut, again, just gut feeling is they're going to be looking to make a couple of examples here. And so don't be the example.
And right? It's going to be, it's always going to be the smallest guy.
Yeah, right.
Pays
right.
the least amount of tax money that's going to get nailed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So yeah, they'll probably be looking to make a couple of examples out of people who just either slough this off or don't get it right, or intentionally just, oh yeah, here's some data and go away. I would say don't be that guy. I really hope nobody gets fined, but I have a feeling that we're going to start seeing some of that.
Oh yeah, and that is good advice to leave off on.
Sure.
So thank you for your time today. And this is awesome. And I'm very, very excited for what you guys are doing. And I'm very, very grateful. And I know that a lot of people in the industry are extremely grateful for what you're doing, because you're saving our butts. I mean, there's a lot of us, I don't need to go back down the rabbit hole, that are going to be relying on you because you guys specialize in this. And
yeah.
That's really all I can
So-
say is thank you. If you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe.
I'll say one more thing before we go. Sarah
yeah, sure.
has a referral code with us.
Oh, yes.
So
Thank you. I didn't want to bring that up. I thought it'd be kind of weird.
no, yeah, use Sarah's code if you need to.
And thank you.